And it was an attitude that we've utterly and thoroughly rejected and are tired of. And so we've had to come back and say, how can I be a Christian and be like those people? And we've had to deal with these things in such a way as to come around and try to identify, not so much in a way of rejection of their values and lifestyle, as a finding of our own values and lifestyle. And one of the things that's become very important to me personally is the issue of simplicity and truthfulness. Nothing done for effect or to manipulate someone else into an experience or a response. Committed to honesty and integrity. Now you would think that all Christians were committed to these things, but they're not. Many of them have been impugned and controlled and frankly can't understand ministry in any other context. I was in Atlanta recently with a dear young brother that has been a friend and we've related, and he asked me to come to his church. And so last couple Sunday mornings ago, I was at his fellowship, and we're talking naturally and normally, and everything's going fine. And all of a sudden, the music starts, and he puts on this attitude. It's like he was now pastor. And his voice became very gilded, and his mannerisms became very staged, and deliberate. And he began speaking. I thought he looked like he was conducting a funeral at the local mortuary. It was a whole thing that he'd been conditioned to and trained in since he was a child, growing up through the church. And his voice dropped in timbre and quality, and he began speaking with his preacher voice, and began communicating the importance of the things of God. And later on, we're talking, and he said, he says, I'm probably a little stiff and formal, aren't I? And I said, I don't know. I said, I guess you have to be who you are. You've been conditioned to certain attitudes and techniques and mannerisms, and it's come out of your life. I'm not here to criticize who you are or what you do. And he said, well, what do you think of the church service? And I said, well, it's fine. You're doing a good job. What he really wanted, though, was something I couldn't give him. Because, you see, he doesn't say, pass the salt, at home with that voice. Or how tired are you tonight, honey? With that voice. That's not the way he talks. That's not the way he interacts, in his daily life. That's what he does on stage. That's his stage manner. And so he finally, he pressed the point. I felt sorry for him. He pressed the point. We were driving along towards the airport. I've had some terrible airport rides in my life. And so he pressed the point, and he says, what I'm wanting to know is, what do you think about the way I handle myself in front of the people? And I said, I think it's a bunch of crud. I said something a little bit more articulate at that time. And he was shocked, and he looked at me and he said, you think it's that bad? And I said, yeah, I think you're perpetuating something that's unreal. It's phony. Though it's a mannerism that you've been trained in, it's not real. It's the very thing you're rejecting. And you're projecting. He says, I don't know how to act any other way. I said, why don't you stand up and tell the people that? Next Sunday. Why don't you just go in front of them and say, I don't know how to act. Will you people help me act real and help me to get away? And if you catch me in this mannerism and acting that other way, will you raise your hand and I'll stop and we'll talk about it? Because probably in a week or two you could get rid of that mannerism. Couldn't you? He called me last Tuesday at the office, or Wednesday at the office, because I came home on Tuesday. And he said, I'm going to do that. I said, God bless you, man. You'll be free. It won't take very long to take that off. Because he puts it on in seconds. He ought to be able to get it off. Values then are the concepts which we highly esteem as being most important to us in the Vineyard. Simplicity, truthfulness, nothing done for effect to manipulate, committed to honesty and integrity, importance of individuals and relationships with them, and on and on and on. We could articulate them. There's no sense of me giving you a list because they may not be yours, but they're the ones that are important to me. Values then form the basis of all of our ministry. They must be carefully thought through, developed, and articulated if we don't know who we are. let's take a few moments to find out what your values are. Let's continue and look at some of the other tools here briefly. I just want to make some comments so that as you work on them later, you'll know what I mean. For instance, the aim of this tool is to help you clarify the specific personality of your fellowship. It will answer the question, how do you go about carrying out our ministry? Your philosophy of style of ministry determines the people making up the ministry, the supporters, the way of the ministry is viewed by others, and their religious and personal lifestyle of the leadership. And so sometimes you can get it by reducing it to just words. And you can say, what 3 words best describe your fellowship? Well, it depends on who you are and at what level you're participating. Some of you would say hectic, if you worked in the nursery, maybe. Some of you would look at it, from another perspective. The key here is not to become profound, but just to express off the top what are the kinds of things. Like, for instance, the one I get fed back the most often in our church is laid back. Whatever that means theologically, I don't know. But people say, you're so laid back. Well, I don't know what that means exactly. But I'm an uptight, nervous individual. But I guess the fellowship doesn't project that, as a local church entity. What makes up this fellowship? What kind of people support this fellowship? Crazies? You might... we got some married people, we got some divorced people, we got some single people, we've got some young people make up our church, Until recently, I guess about 2 years ago, there were only 3 people my age and older in our local church. And so, but recently, because of my visibility on television, or visiting television, we've been getting a lot of elderly people because they watch television. But up until then, we didn't have anybody in the church that was properly mature, like me. So it was a young people's church. Now the point is not what is best, but what do you have? Do you have a lot of young people? Do you have a lot of singles? Say that. Are they people that work in a single industry? Say that. What characterizes? All you want to do is identify, clarify who you are and what you're all about. What makes the fellowship unique? It could be the form of services. It could be the location. It could be the kind of leadership that's given to it. What makes it unique? What are the most attractive things about the fellowship? Well, sometimes it's the fact that you meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the people that come are people that stay out late and like to get up late on Sunday, and they like to come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What is it about your fellowship that appeals to the people to whom the ministry is directed? Well, probably the most common response we would get to that in our church is worship. They never say the teachings. Can you imagine? They always say the worship. I love the worship here. Well, I love the worship here too. But couldn't you say something? No. So what is it? What are they like? The people will tell you. And that's important to have registered. To whom does your fellowship have the greatest appeal? Well, for years, ours was to singles and to young people. To whom would your fellowship like to appeal? To something other than just singles and young people, What programs and activities have been successful for the church? Well, how do you measure success? Attendance, involvement. Sometimes you can have... I saw a church that was so successful in Brooklyn that it went out of business. And by that I mean it was very effective in reaching children. And at one point they had nearly 2,000 children in their church services, but they only had 11 families. And so the thing suffocated through evangelism. They were very effective in winning kids, but they couldn't get the parents in the church. And so the church suffocated through evangelism. Can you imagine that? So how do you measure success? And what do you mean by success? Well, what we mean is what you mean. You answer that question according to your perceptions. What are the strengths of your fellowship? What are the things that you perceive to be strengths? What are the things that other people think of as strengths? What do you think must be kept in mind in developing your philosophy of ministry? What are your personal non-negotiables, things or values which will be unchanging? You see, I have many negotiable areas, but there are some things that are non-negotiable to me. I will never quit preaching the Bible. That's a non-negotiable to me. it has to come out of the Word. It has to correlate with the Word. I am a thoroughgoing evangelical, committed to the notion that people have to be saved. That's a non-negotiable to me. I'll talk to people about other views, but I'm not going to change my mind. I'm committed to it. I'm committed to what I think is a biblical perception of spiritual gifts. I'm not ashamed of speaking in tongues. I'll do it anytime, any place. And I don't think it's an anti-intellectual experience. I'm not backing up to people and saying, oh yeah, well I do speak in tongues, you know. I'm committed to it. I'm committed to healing the sick. It's nothing I'm ashamed of. Committed to ministering to the demonized. Committed to ministering to people that have certain social and aberrant behaviors that are destroying their lives. Glad to have them among us. Glad to be able to minister to them. These are non-negotiables. These are not going to change. It's not going to change whether there's 2 of us or 2,000 of us. We're going to do that. I'm committed to worship. We're going to do that whether there's 2 of us or 10 of us or 11 of us or 41 of us or 4,000 of us. We're going to do that every time. Committed to it. Committed to the way we do it. You know, the only thing would change is if God spoke to us and said, do it a little different. Then we would change it. But we're just going to keep on doing that until Jesus comes. Every week. See, I was a minister long before they started paying me for it. I became a minister when I became a Christian. That's what I thought becoming a Christian was. I didn't know you could get to heaven any cheaper than that. I thought you were supposed to do all this stuff. I read the New Testament and I thought, hot dog. They're going to let me do all that stuff? I want in. I didn't know you were just supposed to come and shine it. Get it? So some of these things are non-negotiable. They're just, I'm not going to dialogue on those things. I'm going to just keep doing those things. Whether people like me or don't like me, or whether there's a lot of people that do it or a few that do it, you know, it really doesn't matter. Some are non-negotiable. Now, there's lots of things that are negotiable. The how that we do these things is very negotiable. I'm willing to change or alter throughout this program, you know, do this or do that. I remember one time Ken Gullickson was kidding me about coming to the church, and we were doing something, I didn't remember what it was at the time. Maybe it was small groups. So he went home and revamped his church around it, came back a few months later, and we'd changed it. He was cracking up over the fact that we'd changed. And I said, well, that's a high value to me. Altering things as we move along. I'm very much committed to change. Are we communicating? So write down the non-negotiables. Some of these things you need to put on the paper to see it, just to know that you know that. Just to identify the fact that you have these feelings. Now we've included last year's handout called the Vineyard Vision First Draft, which for some of you you'll be seeing for the first time. And that particular draft was just what it is, a random statement on several topics that we picked, like Bible, worship, fellowship, healing, the poor, training, discipleship, mercy, the kingdom of God, mission. And we could have probably picked 30 more. But those were the random ones, and the idea was just to begin dialoguing on these subjects. Some of the pastors took it last year and went home and began working through it, and some of them sent back documents to me and things that showed that they had theologized and worked out a philosophy and a practice, and they did that of their own accord. I didn't ask them to do it. Some of them took their staffs through it, some of them took a board through it, some of them have elders and they took those through it. Various churches are structured different ways. But the idea is to begin dialoguing on these things and to clarify and to gain meaning from concourse with one another as it relates to training and discipleship and the emphasis of mercy. And these were things that were personal to me and important to me. And so I got a tape recorder out and did it and had a guy edit it and type it up for you, and we brought it. And we could, as I said, have done it on many topics. The point is to have it clear enough in your mind to even be able to put it down. See, a lot of people would like to join you if they only knew what you were doing and who you were. You know? You're smiling real big at him each week. He has a nice smile, but I think he's an idiot. He doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't know where he's going. You know, have you ever been in a strange city and saw a bus come along the street and you wanted to catch a bus, but there was no sign on it, didn't tell you where it was going? That's a frustrating experience. You ever gotten in a cab and tried to tell a taxi driver where you wanted to go but didn't know the name of the place? That's a frustrating experience for him. Because he wants to serve you. He'd like to take you there. But if you don't know where you're going, you won't know it even when you get there. Get it? And so these kinds of things, these kinds of activities and dialogue will help you to know who you are and where you're going. In one or two paragraphs, describe the philosophy or style of ministry. How would you describe your corporate personality? Well, in my case, if I were writing it down like in 2 or 3 word sentences, I'd say we're basically a young people's church. Our lifestyle is fairly low-keyed. We're middle class. We have a percentage of ethnic groups, but they are, and using technical language, I would say they're basically C3s, using the cultural concept. I would say that we are people that want to learn, that are interested in growth, personal growth, that are committed to building strong families and committed to building a church, and just language like that. 3 or 4 pages of it. Then I might take that, having written it down, and begin talking with my wife. You know, do you agree, honey? Is this who we are? So she'd say, yeah, well, I like that part and that part, but here's something that's way off. You know, talk to my friends, the people I'm working with in the church. If you have a little house church, that's a great time to be doing this. Find out who you are corporately. Begin developing language. You see, churches grow in direct proportion. Hear this. Churches grow in direct proportion to the degree that you know who you are and where you're going. It makes it so easy for people to get on or get off. When a guy comes up to you and says, I understand you have a house group and that you're going to make it a church. Who are you and what are you all about? And you say, oh, we're just trusting the Lord for that. You know, and waiting on the Lord to give us direction. Well, where are you going? Well, we don't know yet, but I'm telling you, man, it's hard to join you because you're going no place. But if you've sought the Lord on these things and you have a sense, well, somebody says, who are you? And you say, well, we're a people that really love God and we're committed to the Word of God and to teaching it and to experiencing it. And more than teaching it, we want to work it out in a practical expression of our daily lives. We're a people that desire to be holy. We're not yet there, but it's our intention to become. And we'd like to learn to explore the works of Jesus and to begin doing the things. See, that kind of language immediately puts a guy in a place, oh, I don't want that. You know? I just want to go someplace where I can sell insurance, you know? I need a list of hot prospects. I don't want to get that fanatic. Or the guy might say, wow, you're going to learn to do the things they do in the Bible instead of just talking about it? Get it? Now, the more you know who you are and where you're going, it's not only easier for people to get on and get with it, but it's easier for people to get in. You see, gathering a crowd is just one facet of church life. Once you've got a crowd, you've got to make them a church. A crowd is to a forest as a church is to a building. Okay? You've got to take the raw ingredients of a crowd and make a church out of them. The redeemed of God. The people of the covenant. The community of the kingdom. You've got to teach them the things of God. Teach them the Word, and teach them the way, and teach them the works of God. And that's a lifelong process. And it's got to be carefully thought through and carefully planted, like a gardener or a rancher or that's building a herd or anyone that's building a long-term business. I mentioned yesterday that I was talking to a brother, and he was saying, while he was at the church over the years, he said, I noticed that you a lot of times would plant a concept that it would take 2 or 3 years to develop. And I wanted to restate that again because I think it's important for you to hear. I mentioned yesterday that when people visit our church, worship is one of the highest things, and so is healing and small groups and the marriage and family relationship. And we are doing those things every day, but we haven't taught on them really for years. It's not necessary any longer. It's reinforced now through tapes and through common shared experiences. Because it's built. Get it? That thing is built. We're going to do that until someone tells us to stop it. And it won't be the enemy. So now we're building on the kingdom. For a year, I've been preaching on the kingdom every Sunday. Exploring it, trying to get a grasp of it, an understanding of it, because I know it's central to everything that's going to happen in the next 10 years in my life and in the church's life. So we're planting it. We're planting the seeds of it. And as I shared yesterday, I know it's the most powerful and profound stuff that we've ever planted. And if we look radical now, if we look different now, if we're marching to a different drum now, what's going to happen when that stuff really takes root in our lives? It's an exciting prospect. Get it? I like your enthusiasm. Do you get it? Yeah. You build this stuff then step by step. A lot of times when you're talking to a young pastor or starting a new church and they develop language like I have burdens for, and I think the Spirit is saying, and that's what they're telling you. I don't know what to do next. I'm not sure what I ought to do now, and I'm scared of failure, and so here's something, and they grab it like like they're out in the water in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and they see something floating by. Oh, small groups, that's the answer. Spiritual gifts, that's the answer, But I'm telling you, it shouldn't be that way. We've got to learn to use our noodles to think, as well as move in the power of God. And so the bottom line is we've got to come to grips with who we are and where we're going. And as that begins to cohese and to come together, and so that you can cognate and you can speak it out, you can say it, people will find it easy to make entry and get on with you and go with you. It becomes real easy. And they say, now this is who you are and this is where you're going. What's the contract? All you got. Oh, that's what I've been looking for. 10 people say, oh no, all I've got? Well, I've got other things I want to do in life. You say, well, all right. But about the 11th or 12th person says, all I've got? That's what I've been looking for. Something so worthwhile that it would consume me. Something so important, so eternal, that it's worth laying my life down for. That's what I've been looking for. And I think I found it. Last year when the Calvary and Vineyard group split, with all the tensions and things that were going on, I personally, for a time at least, I had no tensions at all. I felt wonderful because the Lord had spoken to me. He spoke to me very clearly. He spoke to me before I went to a meeting in which precipitated the split. He said, I'm going to do something, and you're going to think it's them, but it's me. Your brother is never your enemy. And so some of my brothers acted like my enemy for a couple of days, but I knew they weren't my enemy. I knew it was the Lord. And so the church, the Vineyard, got started, and the Lord spoke to me very clearly, and I shared with, this is silly, but I shared with it last year. Years and years ago, watching late night TV, I'd seen an interview with Cal Worthington. Now, only Southern Californians understand this. Cal Worthington is a car dealer, not a used car dealer, but a guy that's sort of silly. But he had, at that time, the biggest car dealership in the world. And so they were interviewing him and saying, Cal, how do you account for your success? And he grinned and said, well, I found out what I like to do and I decided to do it to everybody. And so, I'm driving along the freeway one day and I'm saying, Lord, what next? What's going to happen now? And he reminded me of that interview. And he said, John, have you found out what you like to do? I said, oh yeah, Lord. I like to teach the word. I like to lead men. I like to train men and give oversight to them. I like to heal the sick. I like to cast out demons. I like to see families grow and mature. I like couples coming together and being strengthened. I like working with marriages and making that happen. I like to see children growing up strong in the faith. I like to, and I talk for a half hour. I like all that stuff. I like it on Monday. I like it on Tuesday. I like it Wednesday. It's really great on Thursday. Friday is exceptional, and by Sunday, it's just ecstatic. I like it every day of the week. I like it at night. I like it in the morning. I like it all the time. And he says, well, why don't you just do it to everybody? And I said, all right, Lord. So that's what we've been doing this last year, doing it to everybody. Now, I did all that to say this. I know who I am and I know where I'm going. Okay? Some of you know who you are, and some of you know where you're going, but not all of you. I'd encourage you to interact with God, use what material that we've provided here, and make a statement. It can be tentative. You can change it 20 times in the next 3 weeks if you want to. But at least for those few moments, you'll have a track to run on. You'll have a feeling for where you're going. And the clearer you get on it, the easier it will be for God to guide you and for people to know how to interact with you and to help you do and go where you want to go.
The remainder of this message goes on to the next tape in the series.